Well, it's a very good evening to you and yours here in Trinidad and Tobago. And depending on which part of the world you are, well, it's good night, good morning, not sure, but wherever you are, welcome to the monthly special, once a month special here on Mended Studios platform. It's the PAVI segment where we feature topics of interest that will enlighten, educate, inform, and perhaps sometimes entertain. My name is Bawani Prasad, and with me this evening, or at this time, is no less a person than Dr. Farnon, Dr. Niall Farnon. And of course, this month is Glaucoma Awareness Month. We're going to be talking to him about TTOA and glaucoma and eye diseases and whatnot. And you get a chance to fall into the program, as the young people say, by asking questions at an appropriate time when we open the phone line for that kind of interaction. But in the meantime and in between time, we ask you to stay with us, and let's just take a well-deserved commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Courtesy is a presentation of persons associated with visual impairment. Previously on Courtesy.
Excuse me, Mr. Gentleman. I noticed that instead of addressing me directly, you are speaking to my wife and expect her to speak for me. I want you to know I am not speech or hearing impaired. I just happen to be blind.
And what are you having, sir?
Sir, neither am I hearing impaired. There's no need to shout when speaking to me.
And now, on episode 6.
Hey, so there, your man across the street hour.
No. Hey, thanks, eh? But you're doing this thing the wrong way. You can't lift me up and carry me across the street, man. Here's how to do this. Let me hold you just above the elbow. And you walk a step ahead of me. Let me know when to step up and when to step down. And we'll cross together.
Oh, it's all to do this thing.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, bless man, bless up.
Okay, well, there a positive message, a message of training for all those of you who have to encounter blind and visually impaired persons. And we want to thank the scriptwriter, who's no longer with us in the flesh, so to speak, but he has given us a lot of positive messages as to how to cope with blindness. And at about this time, we welcome Dr. Farnon, what's your first name again?
Niall.
Farnon. You see, it's not Niall, Niall. So I was kind of skeptical. But Dr. Farnon, good evening and welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prasad, and thank you for PAVI for having us. Thank you.
And thank you for TTOA for sponsoring this program, particularly here today. Trinidad and Tobago Optometry Association, or Optometrists Association. Correct, optometry, right?
That's it exactly, sir.
Right, so optometry. What is this organization about?
So the TTOA, the Trinidad and Tobago Optometrists Association, it's the professional body for the optometrists in Trinidad and Tobago. So there's roughly around 200 optometrists in Trinidad and Tobago, and anything that is to do with the eye health of the nation, the TTOA is the body that's interested. So we make a lot of posts on Facebook, on Instagram, and it's just to keep our members in contact. The TTOA has a conference every year because eye care changes year after year, nothing stays the same, and so we always, keep our members up to date. So we look out for the patients, we encourage our members to keep up to date, and as I said, whether people think they have a problem with their eyes or whether they know they have a problem with the eyes, it's always a good idea. Don't put it off. Go visit an optometrist, and we can be sure to be able to check it out.
All right, we've heard some big words coming across, things like optometrist, ophthalmologist, and we know that both of them have to do with the eyes. Could you just give us the different definitions and what is the difference between?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So an optometrist is the primary eye care provider of eyes. So if anybody has a problem with the eyes, they should go visit an optometrist, and then we would see whether it's spectacles, whether it's contacts, or whether they need to go ahead and do another further examination with an ophthalmologist.
Oh, so that's
now, yeah, an ophthalmologist is the person that if you have to have surgery, or if you have glaucoma, like we're going to talk about today, or if the diabetes is not being controlled, then you'd need to go see an ophthalmologist. So an ophthalmologist is going to do the surgery. People have cataracts, and if there's anything significantly wrong with the eye, it's the ophthalmologist that's going to take care of the patient. And then us optometrists, we are the ones who will be looking after you initially. And then we decide whether you need contacts, spectacles, maybe magnifiers in the case of low vision. And then if there's something that we cannot do, then we would refer the patient on to the ophthalmologist.
Now you mentioned contacts and glasses and whatnot, but a lot of people look at these things more of a style than a requirement. And I say so because you might tell a patient A, well look, this kind of contact will be better for you because of the ratio of sight that you have, etc. But the consumer, the customer will then tell you, well look, this ain't looking good on my face. I don't want that. I want the other. And therefore styles and brands and everything come into play. How do you convince people, well look, it's not just a brand?
Well, normally when we put them on the letter chart, so you'll get a patient to sit down and they look at all the various letters, that's one way that people realize, oh, hang on a second, maybe there is something wrong. And, I do need to get spectacles. And I mean, that's sure, Mr. Prasad, sometimes it's difficult to let parents know that their little kid actually does need to get spectacles because, they could be missing out so much in school, so much when they're trying to do their studying. And, that's why we recommend anybody, whether they think they see perfectly or whether they're having a problem, it's always good to get the eyes tested every year, every 2 years, whichever it would be, to make sure that the vision is good. Because, as you know, unfortunately, once the vision changes, it's very difficult to go backwards. And the aim of all optometry is prevention. A lot of these issues that some people have could be preventable, and it's a matter of catching it on time. And that's where, as I said, when they realize that the vision has changed, that's when people then realize, oh, maybe I do need to get spectacles, not just for fashion, but actually for functionality to be able to see well. And that's why, again, the importance of the eye exam.
I noticed that we talk about spectacles, we talk about contacts, etc. But we have not spoken about denial, because there are some people who feel that this can't happen to them, I am that could see good, and therefore the reality to them is that nothing is wrong with me.
And that's true, and that's the sad situation that we see in our clinics, that even by the time the patient accepts that and gets rid of the denial, it could be way too late for anybody, an ophthalmologist or an optometrist, to help them. And you're correct, denial is one of those things that we're here to educate the patients. Denial is not going to be the right answer at any time. And even if it's, people think, as you say, my vision cannot get any worse, or it's already gone, it's already very, very blurry, there's nothing that anybody can do for them. But, the vast majority of times that is something, but if one leaves it too late, then it gets more difficult to treat. And denial is just not a good road to travel down. It's important to understand, and as we're going to go through later on tonight, there are risk factors for various people. And so if there are any changes, it is just a matter of getting the eyes tested.
Now, you spoke about parents and the importance of parents accepting that their child has, especially a school-age child, has a problem, and this problem should be tackled front on, so to speak. because you don't want it to get worse. You're trying to prevent, you're trying to eliminate as far as humanly possible the decrease in eyesight and all of that. In terms of children, there are some simple tips that they need to follow, and the parents need to supervise them, because especially now that we have this education system, which is spending 5-6 hours perhaps on a computer, and then another 3 hours on a phone because the teacher sent a volume of work for you and all of that, it's going to have an impact on the eye, unfortunately and obviously.
Certainly, and that's true, and research has shown that particularly youngsters, kids that are on the computer screens too long, it can affect their eyesight if there's not enough regular breaks. So the TTOA normally recommends the 20-20-20 rule, which is for every 20 minutes, look away 20 feet, so in other words, across the room for 20 seconds. So give yourself that break every 20 minutes. All you have to do is look across the room for a small amount, 20 seconds, and that will be sufficient to give your muscles in the eyes relaxation, to give the focusing part of the eye relaxation. The other thing is that to have the screen quite far back. So I'm on my computer now, and if I stick out my arm is away from the computer screen. So that's the distance. If you're on a computer screen and you stick out your arm and you've hit the screen, then you're too near that computer screen. Mm-hmm. And that's the converse for the cell phones, that everybody nowadays is holding it way too near their eyes. Again, it should be at 40 centimeters. And that feels unnatural initially. So people say, nah, I can't do that. I have to hold it near. But in the long term, for everybody's eye health, 40 centimeters or further is better for the cell phone. And then for the laptops and the computer screens, they should be at least an arm's length away, which is, roughly 66 centimeters. And then people say, oh, I can't take a break every 20 minutes. I've got this deadline. As you said, I've got this homework to do. I can't take a break. Well, if not a break every 20 minutes, then maybe a break every hour, but it would want to be a 5-minute break, so a big, long break. And then people say, oh, I can't take a break every hour. And then after 2 hours, the eye definitely has reached its limits. And after 2 hours, we would recommend a 15-minute break. And again, that's not just for your eyes, it's for your neck and your back, because,
for your whole body. For your whole body.
That's it, exactly. And the parents, of course, kids won't know this. So that's why it's crucial that the parents supervise the children, making sure they do take the breaks, making sure they're not too near. And, even now, I have a 3-year-old niece and a 1-year-old niece, and my sisters-in-law, they just give the cell phones to the kids, and, they listen to Peppa Pig, and they listen to Baby Shark and all these things. And that's okay, but it has to be in moderation. It has to be in moderation, because research has shown that excessive amount of near work is going to cause damage to some kids. And that's where let's take everything in moderation.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because it seems to me that a lot of parents, before the advent of cell phones, used the television set as the babysitting mechanism for their kids. And the kids, they sit there, they watch all the cartoon after cartoon, and the parents don't care what happens, because they're busy constructively or unconstructively doing what they want to do, and then the kids are left alone. Now with the introduction of cell phones, I have heard stories of parents being put to bed by children watching cell phones.
Yeah, even as I said, my little 3-year-old niece knows how to open up the tablet, knows how to go onto YouTube, and knows how to find Baby Shark, etc. Doesn't need any hint. She just watched her parents do it, and then she's able to mimic that. And it's very, very scary. And, again, research has shown that sometimes some of these kids, they become very addicted to the screen time. As you said, years ago it was television, but the televisions were further away. Television would have been 3 feet away, 6 feet away.
Yeah.
But these devices are what we would call ultra near. They're way too near. And, you know, there's fascinating information that if you take away a cell phone from a kid, they almost have a tantrum. You know, it's almost like you're taking away food or sugar or something else because they're so used to doing that. And another thing, Mr. Prasad, if you want me to, if I can say, is, you know, there's a lot of misinformation about how bad the light is coming from the screen. Now, there's a lot of Facebook ads of how you can get these special lenses and different things. And a lot of these ads are almost making the grandparents or parents guilty into buying these special lenses that are for computer screens. But nowadays, a lot of these screens already come with those filters. And a lot of them come with a nighttime mode. And so the screen could easily be turned down on the brightness of it. And a lot of those lenses that are for sale have actually been shown that there's nothing, that there's no proven benefit from those lenses. And so again, if parents, grandparents are worried about the amount of time their kids are on the screen, excellent, but give them a break. Don't change it by giving them a pair of lenses that are meant to help them. It won't help them. Take a regular break. Take a regular break from the screens and make sure that they get good outdoor light, relaxation that way. You know, the light that's coming from the tablets is the same light that's coming from the sun. And yet you don't hear these Facebook people who are selling these so-called lenses talk about the damage of sun. And, you know, we're really passionate about that in the TTOA. Parents, please, when you see these ads on Facebook, advertising special computer lenses for your kids and grandkids, be very, very careful. The best thing is turn down the brightness, give them regular breaks, and during the day, kick them out the back and give them the sun. It's nice under small circumstances, and give them natural daylight. This whole thing about damaging the eyes from the computer screen, there's no need for special lenses that way.
The other thing about that is, the other drawback is the fact that a lot of people are now becoming couch potatoes because they got so lazy that if they could help it, the washroom could come by the couch because they're busy doing things sometimes unnecessary. And that in itself has a direct effect on another condition which affects the eyes more times than ever, and that is the situation with diabetes because of the fact that,
That's it. So between diabetes and glaucoma, they are the two biggest causes of vision loss in Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean. And exactly as you said, you know, we become more like couch potatoes, and then we're not eating as good as we should be. We're not looking after ourselves. And like you said before about the Niall, you know, some people notice, hang on a second, you know, I'm getting more thirsty, or I'm losing weight very, very quickly, or I'm going to the bathroom a lot. And they may have seen that in their parents or their brothers and sisters, and yet they don't know, it can't be me, I can't be diabetic. And then they refuse to get a diabetic test. And, you know, by the time someone gets seriously ill with diabetes, they would have been diabetic for maybe 3 to 5 years. And then the longer you're diabetic, the more likely something may go wrong with your eyes. And so if you know you have a family history of diabetes, again, don't be in denial. Get checked regularly, maintain a good diet, maintain a good exercise regime, and look after yourself, because that is one of the prevalent things in Trinidad and Tobago is diabetes, and with that is changes to the eye because of diabetes.
Now again, another factor might be, okay, the weather is hot, the sun is hot, it's humid outside, I need to drink a lot more. So they assume that because of these things and not really having or not being a diabetes potential client, that, you know, it's just that the weather different and I have to react differently and stuff like that. But
that's it. And another thing, like females, you know, the females, when they start to lose weight suddenly, they think it's the great thing ever. I haven't gone on a diet, and yet I've started to lose weight. and they think that's excellent. Well, that's not the case. If you lose weight suddenly and you haven't been exercising and you haven't been on a diet, then that is an indication that something, it may not be correct. And so you're correct. We think within the tropics, that's why we drink more water. And then, as I said, we get excited when we lose weight, but we don't stop and think, well, hang on a second, I wasn't on a diet, or I haven't been improving my exercises. So, how did I lose the weight?
Mm-hmm. And they begin to get very concerned about it. Now, did the optometrist see the patients of all categories, whether it be diabetes, whether it be glaucoma, whether it be cataract? Speak to some of these diseases by themselves. Cataract, for example, is something that grows in the eye or over the eye. And you hear people say, well, the doctor say I can't cut it until I get right, and all of these. What causes cataract deficiency?
Well, we often think cataracts are more like a celebration of age. If we all live long enough, we will all get cataracts. That's a fact. And the lens in anybody's eyes, basically it gets a new layer added onto it. So like an onion, it has the certain rings around it, and the lens in the eye is very similar to that. And then as one gets older, as a new layer is added onto another layer, the lens just becomes thicker and hazier. And that's why, by the time someone's 65, 70, we're all bound to have cataracts. Now, some people get cataracts earlier if they don't look after the diet, if they're diabetic, they get a bad lash to the head. Other people get, earlier cataracts. But most of us, if we live long enough. Another reason people get cataracts early is if we spend too much time in the sun. So people who work in the post office delivering the letters, the service personnel, the police officers, the army officers, etc. People out in the farms, they may also get cataracts early if they don't protect their eyes from those nasty UV rays from the sun. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the categories of people who could be potential targets are, cricketers, because of the fact that a game of cricket takes 6 hours a day? 6 to 7 hours depending.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you see those cricketers wearing the fancy sunglasses, because they know about the dangers of the UV. And they know, as you say, that on the pitch, and a lot of sun, it hits the grass, and then it comes back into the eyes. But anybody, particularly we live in the Caribbean, when you go out in the sun, we should all be wearing good quality sun specs, because the amount of UV light out is just huge. So back home, I'm from Ireland, I'm Irish, but back home, we
Wait, you're from Ireland, from Irish, but happy belated St. Patrick's Day to you.
Say again?
Happy belated St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, thank you. If this was yesterday, I had green on, so yes.
Okay. All of these special days, eh?
That's it. Every day has a special day. But yeah, back home, we don't see much sun even during the summer. So when I moved over here, there's obviously a lot more sun. So when I'm outside in the sun, I definitely need to have a good pair of UV spectacles. And even if you don't need spectacles, it is important to have UV protection. So, but as I said, most people, if we all live long enough, please God, we will all get cataracts. There's no way of getting away from that. It is just a sign of natural age in that way.
Well, a dog is trying to give me competition at 27 minutes after 6. So if you hear any barking, it's beyond my control. As we continue our discussion, let's talk about glaucoma now, because that is a non-curable disease.
That's it.
Of course, if you maintain what you have, you can maintain sight for as long as humanly possible. And then we go on to diabetes. But I think it's a good time to take a little breather, as you say, a little rest. So, Julian, if you don't mind, just bring up the next set of commercials and we'll be back.
Courtesy is a presentation of persons associated with visual impairment. Previously on Courtesy.
I tell them children it's dangerous to leave the cupboard door open. I and all with my two big eyes that's crash into it. Imagine for a blind person who can't see.
And now on episode 5.
Oh, George, I'm so happy we decided to spend this time together tonight.
Yes, babes, after all, it's your birthday, and I want to make this a night to remember.
Georgie, you're so adorable. Oh, here comes the waiter.
Good evening, ma'am. I noticed when you were coming in, he was holding you. Is he sick?
No, sir. My husband is blind.
Oh, poor thing.
Sir, my husband doesn't need your sympathy. What we want is to be served.
Yes, ma'am. What are you having?
We aren't ready to order, but meanwhile, please bring me a glass of red wine.
And what will he like to have?
Excuse me, Mr. Gentleman. I noticed that instead of addressing me directly, you are speaking to my wife and expect her to speak for me. I want you to know I am not speech or hearing impaired. I just happen to be blind.
And what are you having, sir?
Sir, neither am I hearing impaired. There's no need to shout when speaking to me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What are you having, sir?
I'll have a brandy.
Oh, Georgie, I feel so...
Let me be your light. I'm gonna give you the day. Take your night. I just wanna be there for you.
Well, here we are back together again, and this evening on the program we're talking to a representative, Dr. Farnon, and he is from the Trinidad and Tobago Optometrists Association. And of course, the special program this evening is sponsored by Trinidad and Tobago Optometrists Association. And if you want to contribute to this program, paying for it, we welcome it, because it's the only way we can stay on the air. So you can call PAVI's office and find out how you can donate to this initiative, because the more we get, the more programs like these we can bring on the air. And again, let me thank PTUA for their generosity of not just providing being a sponsor, but providing a knowledgeable doctor of Irish accent to us here in Trinidad and Tobago. Doc, glaucoma.
Yes, so that's why we're so happy to be here, because glaucoma is just one of those eye diseases that's just devastating to the Caribbean community. And a lot of it could be preventable by people, as you said before, realizing that the eye is a precious thing and we can't be in denial. We need to understand that if we have glaucoma, then we need to take it under control. We need to take it on board, because if any damage has been done, we don't want it to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
So glaucoma is when the optic nerve in the back of the eye, it gets damaged for some reason. Now, there's many reasons why it could be damaged, but the main one is that the pressure in your eye becomes too high for that eye. And then over time, you will find yourself losing your side vision.
Okay.
Now, this is the challenge, though, that when we're looking at television, when we're driving, when we're in the boarding school, we're using our central vision. And so we may not even notice our side vision is changing until it's too late, until we start bumping into people in the supermarket aisle, or when we're driving, we don't realize the cars have suddenly come up behind us, because that's what we use our side vision for. We use our side vision to help us locate where objects are, to move along corridors, to go up and down stairs. And this is the challenge, that if our side vision goes initially, patients mightn't even notice it. It could be somewhere between 3 to 5 years before the patient picks up that they have glaucoma. And that's why, again, it's important, listeners and viewers, that if you feel your vision is not as good as it should be, then we would strongly advise to get your eyes checked by an optometrist.
Right. Let's talk about diabetes, because that is the number one source of blindness in Trinidad and Tobago. And we have not really given statistics, so maybe if you want to throw the statistics in for the 3 categories that we're talking about, it will help listeners and viewers to understand and appreciate the magnitude of the problem.
Well, one of the challenges is that there isn't much research within Trinidad and Tobago or the Caribbean about how much exactly who does not have glaucoma and diabetes. But for the over 18s, then over 18s up to 80, diabetes and glaucoma are the two main loss of vision. Some studies say glaucoma and some studies say diabetes, but there's no definitive research that says X amount, Y amount would have that. But for sure, even when we look at our own patient base in our various clinics around the country, then for sure, it's a lot of diabetes and a lot of glaucoma. And in fact, unfortunately, if you are diabetic, you are actually more at risk of developing glaucoma as well. And that's where, a lot of people with diabetes, they just put it on the long arm. They don't take it on board. They don't change their diet. They don't change their exercise regime. And then things start to go wrong with the eyes. And that's one of the problems with the eyes. Once something goes wrong, it's very, very difficult to go backwards. Very difficult to repair any damage that has been done before. So, again, anybody out there who is diabetic, yes, it's not nice taking the medication. It does have its occasional side effects. It's not nice having to prick your finger to be able to check your sugar level, but it is better than losing your vision because of something that could have been preventable. And again, a lot of Trinis think think about that diabetes is a life sentence, and they don't want to take it on board. They'd much rather just ignore it and continue. But it doesn't have to be a life sentence. It's just a matter of stepping back, looking at your exercise regime, looking at your diet, and doing all that. It doesn't have to be. Some people get quite depressed being diagnosed with diabetic because they see what can go wrong, which is fair enough. But there's many, many happy diabetics out there who are well able to control their sugar, well able to control the diet, and lead very, very successful lives. And, that's where the need is that the Diabetic Association make sure that people can help each other to control this diabetes.
One of the old-time stories is once upon a time, you associated diabetes, or what we used to call sugar, with elderly people, old people. But now we're seeing it across the board, across the spectrum. We even have children who have diabetes because of obesity. So one factor should always lead to the other.
Yes, I mean, that's the amazing thing, that, as you said, when we heard the word sugar, we thought about granny getting diabetes that way. But now there's two types of diabetes. There used to be called juvenile diabetes and old age diabetes, which is diabetes type 1 and diabetes type 2. And nowadays, the type 2, I mean, there's even 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds getting what was called old age diabetes. And again, it all comes down to lifestyle, is what we discussed before, that people are sitting down, they're on their Xbox, PlayStation, they're not looking at Netflix, and they'd much rather just sit on the sofa rather than go outside and enjoy the lovely weather and go for an exercise, go for a walk and different things. And, years ago, didn't we all sit down on a Sunday and we would have cooked all the food for the week, and we would have had meals for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. And now we're all working so hard that by the time you get home from work, it's much quicker to pass by KFC or pass by Pizza Hut.
Oh, okay, one of those fast food outlets.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah,
and people just think that's the quick way. But of course, nutritionally, we have to make sure we have a balanced diet. We want to make sure that the body is able to cope with this amount of different foods. And that's where a balanced diet is going to be the most important thing.
But in terms of diabetes, I know apart from the eye, you could also lose other limbs. So diabetes is in fact the more you can't say the most serious, but it is the more cause for concern when it talks to lifestyle diseases.
That's it. I mean, glaucoma is just one of those unfortunate diseases that it's mainly down to genetics. That's one of the risk factors. If you know anybody in your family that has glaucoma, so for example, your parents or your brothers and sisters, there is a strong likelihood that you are more at risk of you developing glaucoma. And this is where, there's not much you can do to prevent yourself from getting glaucoma. The key element of glaucoma is picking it up early, because as an optometrist, we can pick it up very, very early, even before the patient notices. But by the time the patient notices, it could be 3 to 5 years down the line. And of course, 3 to 5 years of damage has been done. And diabetes, a lot of that, particularly the type 2 diabetes, is possible to be managed on most patients, if not by diet, by exercise, and certainly medication. But again, we have lots of patients that just don't take the medication. Sometimes it makes you a little bit queasy and different things, but it's important to talk to your doctor. Well, this medication makes me feel a little bit sick, because there's lots of different diabetic medications out there. And, it doesn't mean everybody's going to be suitable for the exact same. But definitely, you need to take on whatever's going wrong with the eyes and the body. We need to take it on.
Right. In terms of, I know in Trinidad and Guyana in particular, we have two ethnic groups, basic two ethnic groups. And there is this school of thought, and you being an optometrist might be able to correct me, and you being from out of the region might be able to correct me, that you would find glaucoma mostly among the African and other sectors, while you find diabetes more among the Indian. Now, I said Trinidad and Guyana in particular, because I know that up the Caribbean in the other countries, where you have a greater population of Africans or Negroes, you still have that impact of diabetes. But have you found here in Trinidad and Tobago that one ethnic grouping develops an eye condition more than the other?
Well, it's interesting, because it goes back to what we were discussing before. Because of the lifestyle changes, diabetes, that's just anybody. Anybody is going to be very prone to get diabetes, whether they're African heritage, whether we have Indian heritage. The diabetes is certainly something that doesn't seem to have any boundaries, on ethnicity, because, again, our lifestyle has changed in the last 20 years. It's definitely changed.
Before you go on, I want to bring in a little punchline here. Trinidad and Tobago was one of those countries where we manufactured a beautiful thing called sugar. Now that sugar industry is no more, we find in its place diabetes being very rampant.
We replace one industry with something else, exactly. But you are correct then about glaucoma. The research has shown again and again and again that those of African heritage are more at risk. It doesn't mean they're definitely going to get it, but they are definitely more at risk. And never mind be more at risk, they're also more at risk of having devastating consequences of glaucoma. So glaucoma in an African heritage patient is more likely to rapidly progress than someone else of an ethnicity. So that's the other thing that, I want the listeners and the viewers to understand, that it's never mind that you may be more at risk of it, but it's also more of a risk that it will actually change an awful lot quicker, and that is more of a risk of losing your vision quicker, again, particularly if people don't take it on board. And that's, again, the importance of annual eye exams. Get it checked. Whether you think you see well or not, it's important to get it checked.
19 minutes before the hour of 7 o'clock here in Trinidad and Tobago and Eastern Caribbean, and you're listening and viewing, of course, the Mended Studio Facebook platform page, where this time on the third Thursday of every month, the PAVI segments take control from 6 to 7 p.m. So you got to spread the news, you got to tell people about it, and remember, in order for this program to stay on the air, we need your support, whether individually or collectively. At this time, let's go for that well-deserved commercial break. When we come back, we give you a chance to call it. 747-2197 is the number. It's up on your screen for those of you who can see it. But for those of you who can't, you can still call it. 747-2197. Commercial, right back. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. That is the most silent commercial I've ever seen in my life. Just kidding, just kidding. 747-2197 is our number. Doc, is there any aspect that we did not highlight that you want to highlight now?
Yes, again,
okay.
just to emphasize it, that we did mention it briefly, but there's this kind of culture that if there's something wrong with my eyes, that just like the lovely commercials between the various segments here, that if I lose my vision, then I'm hopeless. And, and that's very sad to see that. And this is why we're happy to be here and we support PAVI to be able to promote that, yes, losing your vision obviously is devastating and it does take time to adapt, but it isn't the fact
it isn't
that
the end of the world. It isn't the end of the world.
Just like the ads say, we haven't lost our hearing, we haven't lost our sense, and here we are now having a wonderful show. And that's something culturally that we really also want people to change.
Okay, well, we have a caller. Good evening, caller. Hello. Let's see if Julian could bring that individual up on the screen. Hello. Okay, Julian, I might have to interject and ask you to interpret what the question is from the caller because we're not hearing the caller coming through on our system. Right, before you go there, we want to urge people, if you can't get through on the phone line, you can post questions to on screen like this caller, like this poster has done. And it's basically to explain the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Thank you very much for your question.
That's an excellent question. So type 1 diabetes, when we break it down simply, is just there's not enough insulin, which is a chemical in the body which breaks down the sugar that we consume. So whether it's in sugary drinks or whether it's in the sugar cane that we were talking about, or whether it's in the food, the carbohydrates like the roti and all the other fast food outlets we were talking about, there's just not enough there. And the body cannot produce enough of that insulin, which is why for type 1 diabetes, they would inject themselves with insulin for the rest of their life, or to have an insulin pump. Basically, there's a lack of insulin that way. Now, type 2 diabetes is still about insulin, but it's of a different sort, that the insulin is either not being efficiently used because maybe we're overweight is one example, or there's just some, as I said, not a good exercise regime, or the insulin itself is not productive enough or not able to do the job that it should. And this is where there's different medications. And unfortunately, if it is left long enough, then also type 2 diabetics have to inject themselves with insulin. But that's, things have gone a little bit astray. Normally, it's coped by good diet, good exercises, and 1 or 2 tablets a day, depending on how advanced it is. And that's the key difference that patients need to know, the viewers and the listeners need to know, that I'm not diabetic. So if I did eat the fast food or roti or had a sugary drink, the insulin kicks in, does its job, my sugar level naturally goes up, but the insulin brings it back down again. But if a diabetic is not controlled, eats the carbohydrates, it eats the sugary drink, drinks the sugary drinks, there's not enough insulin, so the sugar level just keeps going up, 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 up. And that's where people feel very unwell, that they'll notice vision changes, they become disorientated, and that's where they feel, oh gosh, something's wrong. But by the time that sugar level has gone that high, the body's already active. That's it. That's it. And that's why they need to prick their fingers either every day or at least once a week. And the diabetics that have it under control, they have a little diary, or even nowadays you can have it on a cell phone or a tablet. And okay, last week it was 120. This week it's 200 for some whatever reason. Oh, I need to watch out for my exercise or for my diet. And that's the key issue, that the sugar levels go up too high, and then eventually the eyes get affected as well, and the eyes start to leak, And once the eyes start to leak, then that's where, as I said, the vision is going to be quite hazy, and it's very, very difficult to come back from that point. Once the eyes start to leak, it's a very difficult treatment the patient would have to undergo.
All right. Well, we have to interact with Julia. Any questions or callers?
Excellent.
The two-part question.
That's a great question, because a lot of patients get this test done and they might be a little bit fearful, they might be a little bit unaware. So as I'm looking straight ahead at Mr. Prasad here, I can see his screen, I can see my whole computer screen, but also I can see, the viewers won't be able to see it, but I can see there's a bookshelf to my left, and then I have my phone to my right, and that's my side vision. Now, it's always good having two eyes, but normally it's actually for glaucoma, it's a disadvantage having two eyes, because one of my side vision may be changing and I won't know about it because my other eye is compensating for it. So what a visual field test done is a special machine. It doesn't hurt, but what it happens are going to cover one eye, and basically you look straight ahead at a screen and it just checks how far out you can see to the side. Because remember, that's what's going to happen with glaucoma. Your side vision is going to change. It won't be as nice as far as it should be. So again, I've covered my eye. I can see, even though I'm looking straight ahead, I can see there's a bookshelf here. And then they'll uncover that eye, cover the other eye, and then it see how far out this eye can see. And then based on your age, it decides whether you should be able to see so far out. But as I said, in very advanced cases of glaucoma, it's basically like having tunnel vision. All you can see is just straight ahead.
Straight ahead.
So anybody coming to the left or to the right of you is going to surprise you because you have no idea. And then sometimes you may not be able to see your own feet, or you may not be able to see tree branches along the avenue as you're walking along. And it's quite devastating because we don't realize how much of our side vision we use, unfortunately, until we miss it. But once it's gone, it's gone. And that's why the optometrist or the ophthalmologist would recommend having a visual field test, because it's the most accurate way, and quite frankly, the easiest way to check, can this patient see how far out they can. Now, an OCT, that's a more modern machine, a more recent machine. And again, in simple terms, that is like an ultrasound machine, but instead of using sound, it's using light. And what it's doing is checking the health of the optic nerve. The optic nerve is the thing that will get damaged by glaucoma. And so the machine, again, it doesn't hurt. It just shines a laser light into the back of the eye, and it can tell if that optic nerve is healthy or if it's becoming damaged, or unfortunately, if the case, it becomes too damaged. And that's the beauty. That's what I was saying at the start, that optometry and eye care, it never stays the same. And that's why our optometrists under the TTOA, we have our conferences, because even 10 years ago, an OCT didn't exist in everyday life. And even the OCT of 10 years ago is completely changed to the OCT of today. It just gets better. Technology just gets better and better, and we can pick up glaucoma quicker and easier. There's no pain. There's no anything poking onto your eye. It's a very painless process. And again, viewers and listeners, that's the difference between maintaining good eye health or losing eye health. A simple visit to the optometrist, and then if something is not what it should be, you'll put on eye drops initially. There's no surgery if it's caught on time. It's just a matter of putting eye drops on. And then that eye drops will try to protect your vision.
Stay with this eye test for a minute, because I recognize that we use around the world two kinds of tests. We use the Snelling chart test or the light test, and then we use the logma chart.
Yes.
The logma chart to me seemed to be a more deep, well, I'm no expert, but after hearing somebody present it at a sports conference many years ago, the logma chart seems to give you a more better assessment of a person's sight, whereas the Snelling chart gives you, a kind of picture, and some people play games with it because they pretend to see or not to see conveniently, because we've had cases where people have been classified with a certain level of vision but still driving cars, and they're not supposed to be driving cars, and they want to play blind cricket, for example, or any kind of sports that is ideally suited for blind and visually impaired persons. And when they go out on the road, you see them driving car, running taxi, doing everything else that they're not supposed to be doing. And therefore, can the world's eye organizations come on board and determine, well, look, the logmark chart is the better one to use, or are we still at loggerheads trying to determine, just like sign language, which one is the better one to use?
That's it. No, but definitely, you're fully correct. The logmark chart is definitely a lot more accurate. And, you know, the University of the West Indies has an optometry clinic, and when it does its research, it uses the logmark chart. And then when we are dealing with people with low vision, with visual impairment, because it is more accurate and we want to get a definite point of their vision, then the logmark chart would be used. So that the Snellen chart is good for everyday practice, but then when it comes down to the specialty of low vision, or as you said, for blind cricket and all these gradings, the logmark works much better, and it's a lot more accurate. And as you said, you can figure out who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth. So that's where the beauty of it.
Okay, 6.5 minutes before 7 o'clock. I'm not sure. Do we have another commercial break in sight, or we could go straight?
Yes, we do. So we have a question again. The question
let's do the commercial first, because the question might take us to the top. So let's pause for a worthy cause, pay the bills, and we'll be right back.
Courtesy is a presentation of persons associated with visual impairment. Previously on Courtesy.
Excuse me, Mr. Gentleman. I noticed that instead of addressing me directly, you are speaking to my wife and expect her to speak for me. I want you to know I am not speech or hearing impaired. I just happen to be blind.
And what are you having, sir?
Sir, neither am I hearing impaired. There's no need to shout when speaking to me.
And now, on episode 6.
Hey, soldat, yo m'a appelé pour 18 hours.
No. Hey, thanks, eh? But you're doing this thing the wrong way. You can't lift me up and carry me across the street, man. Here's how to do this. Let me hold you just above the elbow. And you walk a step ahead of me. Let me know when to step up and when to step down. And we'll cross together.
Oh, it's all to do this thing.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, bless one, bless up.
Welcome back to the closing segment of this program. We do have a question, but before we go to that question, I have a question for Julian, and that is that there was one promo, well, not sure if it's audio or just the video, if we used it already, which shows the directors of PTOA. I don't know if you used it already. If not, we could pull it up at the end. In the meantime, let's get that question, Julian. Okay. Very good. Right, so let's get a question then. Julia?
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
So the question is, how is the eye pressure checked, and what is considered a normal eye pressure?
Great.
Nice.
Okay. So there are various ways to check the pressures depending on the need to check the pressure. So one way that a lot of people are familiar, which is what is called the puff of air test. So you put your chin against the chin rest and your head against the headrest, and then a little puff of air comes out of a machine, and that's one way of checking the pressures. Another way of checking the pressure in the eyes is that you can put a little yellow liquid into the person's eyes, and then you touch a probe under anesthetic, and it just for a split second, And that's another way, particularly in the hospitals, people would measure pressures that way. So that's where you have different people doing it different ways. So some people think they haven't had their pressures done because they didn't get the puff of air test, but they would have had a little probe bounced off to the eyes. And then when they're doing the probe, that is another way of checking it. Now, what's normal pressure? Well, that's a very, very interesting question, because there really isn't anything normal if you look at it on the research, because there are many people out there who have what's called normal tension glaucoma. So they would have normal, what we would call normal pressures of the eyes, but they still have the side vision loss. So we don't really want to get too, tied down numbers, because it gives patients a false sense of security. You could have high pressures and you may not have glaucoma, and you could have low pressures and you may have glaucoma. And that's the need to go and see the optometrist, because a lot of people might go to, sometimes they have screenings and you might get your pressure checked, but you have to get the pressure checked and the back of the eye looked to see, is that pressure for that patient affecting that patient's eyes. Just taking the pressure test by itself doesn't make any sense at all. It's just like taking someone's pulse and then you don't know whether they've been doing exercise, if they've been lying down. It's just a number, but that number is irrelevant unless you look into the back of the eyes. And so that's where the optometrist is able to decide, well, hang on a second, the pressure is X, but the optic nerve appears damaged. Okay, that's a sign that we have to do that visual field test and or the OCT, and then that's when glaucoma is picked up. So years ago, people used to say there was a range of normal, but nowadays modern research shows that we shouldn't really think of it that way. It's for that patient, is it too high? And that's where get your eyes checked and the back of the eyes and the pressures checked to see what's happening.
See what I told you? That question will take us to the top. So we have a minute to wind up. Closing remarks, sir.
Well, again, viewers and listeners, I cannot overemphasize your sight is precious. It's one of the senses that people do not want to lose. And even if you feel you have lost some of your vision, there is still hope out there. And there's many people out there with visual impairment who are able to lead very successful life. Mr. Prasad obviously is one of them. And so you've had the two ways. Don't lose your vision, regular eye exams. And if unfortunately you have lose your vision, please do not give up hope. There's many ways to move forward, and PAVI is a wonderful organization to help you do that.
Well, that's a nice way to close up. And let me give credit where credit is due. Let me thank Dr. Farnon for his expertise, and let me thank the TTOA for not just being a part of this initiative, but paying for today's program. And as I said, if people want to contribute to make sure that this program stays on the air, you can call PAVI's office, or you can tell and find out how you can make a donation towards keeping this program on the air. We want to thank Mended Studios as well for their collaboration, their cooperation. We want to thank Pastor Randall, and we want to thank his deputy today, Julian, who did a yeoman's service under trying circumstances. His phone wouldn't work, so he has to take out an eye and get an iPhone, I suppose. And we want to thank you for putting up with us. My name is Bhavani Prasad. On behalf of PAVI, do have a safe time. Remember, as I always say in ending all of my programs, that an ounce of prevention is always better than a pound of cure. Join us next month on the third Thursday for another installment of the PAVI segment. I am out. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Never leave me. Jaja protect me, Jaja protect me. Never leave me. Father God, in your arms I want you keep me. Never leave me. Jaja protect me, Jaja protect me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Even in the midst of my enemies, Jaja want to cover me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Father God protect me, Jesus Christ defend me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Even in the midst of my enemies, Jaja want to cover me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Father God protect me, Jesus Christ defend me. Father, I see them standing by the corner, you I see them. But gun in the hand, you I see them. them. My life the one that destroy, Lord, I hope you see them. Father, I see them. Smiling like but in the heart they really hating. My life the one to see come to end. But me beg you Jesus, please protect me from them. So me sing again. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Even in the midst of my enemies, Jah want to cover me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Father God protect me, Jesus Christ defend me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Even in the midst of my enemies, Jah want to cover me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Father God protect me, Jesus Christ defend me. 1,000 on me left, 10,000 on me right. Father God, me beg you please put them demons to fight. Cause everything you give I the one to steal. Me house, me car, me land, Father, the one to steal. The money in the bank, the one to steal. The woman in me life, the one to steal. The peace and the health you a give I. Me family, they wanna destroy. That's why me say, Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Even in the midst of my enemies, Jah want to cover me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Father God protect me, Jesus Christ defend me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Even in the midst of my enemies, Jah want to cover me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Father God protect me, Jesus Christ defend me. Never leave, never leave, never leave, never leave me. Father God, in your arms I want you keep me. Never leave, never leave, never leave, never leave me. Jah protect me, Jah protect me. Never leave, never leave, never leave, never leave me. Father God, in your arms I want you keep me. Never leave, never leave, never leave, never leave me. Jah protect me, Jah protect me.
Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. In the midst of my enemies, Jah wants to cover me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Father God protect me, Jesus Christ defend me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. In the midst of my enemies, Jah wants to cover me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Father God protect me, Jesus Christ defend me.
Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Even in the midst of my enemies, Jah want to cover me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Father God protect me, Jesus Christ defend me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Even in the midst of my enemies, Jah want to cover me. Jah be my shield, Jah be my shield. Father God protect me, Jesus Christ defend me.